What's On guide to live stream events and shows is now available. You can find the guide on the web at independencelive.net, on multiple Facebook pages, or go direct with the web link tvl.ink/What's On Guide.
This is a new voice for a new Scotland.
We know you're busy people, so most of our shows are also on demand on our Scottish Independence podcast channel, available wherever you get your podcasts. You'll see what a great variety of shows we have. There's something for everyone. Our newest on-demand platform is Indie Live Radio's YouTube channel. We have set up playlists for our most popular shows and current topics, currency, list parties. New content is added almost daily, so subscribe and you won't miss anything. Join us. Thanks for listening.
And different things.
The What's On guide to live stream events and shows is now available. You can find the guide on the web at independencelive.net, on multiple Facebook pages, or go direct with the web link tvl.ink/What's On Guide.
And to me, that's the clear blue water between staying in the UK and going for independence. It's clear, regardless of what Boris Johnson said the other day, that they will want to go back to business as usual, where the ultra rich are the ones who gain from everything. Mm-hmm. We don't want to be part of that. We want the chance to actually build a fairer country.
But I don't think anybody who's gone over to Yes now is really for moving, because I think they can see clear as day what things look like. And I always felt that during the independence referendum that it would take a no vote in order for a lot of Scots to realise the consequences of voting no. They would have to see what happens when they vote no in order to realise what a mistake it was.
Film, you can watch this again, you can be part of it.
Independence Live. Yeah, a few people asked about YouTube. It'll be YouTube/Independence Live. That's where you'll find the footage.
The What's On guide to live stream events and shows is now available. You can find the guide on the web at independencelive.net, on multiple Facebook pages, or go direct with the web link tvl.ink/What's On Guide.
Here we are, it's the Yackin Bridge where we started the first 500 miles. In front of that beast there. This is where it all started. We're now in day 4 and we're heading towards Portree. We'll see he's on the road. Sign the covenant. Long walk to freedom. Talk to you later.
Hi there, I'm Cliff.
And I'm Russ.
And we're from the Veterans for Scottish Independence 2.0 group. And we're just invading your privacy today to let you know that we will be very shortly pushing a programme out on live stream to do with the veterans, their needs as it will be during an independent campaign. The next independence campaign, and indeed in an independent Scotland.
So get yourself in gear, come and join us, pull up a sandbag.
Yes.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Wherever you stand, get the fresh view of what's happening in Scotland with iScot. Celebrate everything about our country with intelligent, in-depth insight from lifestyle, culture to puzzles. And all the opinions you'll need, whether it's digital or by post. Subscribe now to iScot.
Good evening, Fescar Ma to everybody, and welcome to the Hope Over Fear online debate, coming to you live from various corners of Scotland tonight. My name's Gwen Sinclair. I'm an activist, an independence activist. I'm also a member of the CND, and I'm chair of Ayrshire CND, and a member of the SNP as well. And tonight I'm going to host an event which I think and hope that you'll find really interesting. And not only that, I do think it's a very important subject, and I think that there's been much debate about it. And tonight we're actually going to try and find a point of view from two different points of view tonight on whether we should use our 2 votes in the Scottish Parliament elections, which are coming up in May. 2 votes, 1 and 2 for SNP, or whether we should use our first vote for SNP and our second vote for an independence party. Now, obviously, we wanted to max out the amount of people who are representing us in the Scottish Parliament who support independence. And there's never been a more important time, perhaps the most important election that we could, we can think of just now is the Scottish Parliament elections, to show that we are very, very politically engaged in Scotland and that people in Scotland are very much wanting independence. And we want those who represent us to actually, we support independence. So tonight we've got 2 guests who have come along to debate that with us. The first one I'll introduce you to is Peter Bell. Now, Peter's a blogger, and many of you remember him from speaking at a lot of the Yes groups back in the last few years. He travelled throughout Scotland and spoke to, including Ayrshire, where I come from. And he also writes a blog, and he also is done a lot of speaking at rallies. So hi, Peter.
Good evening.
Hi. And our other guest tonight is Dave Thompson. Dave was an MSP. He was an MSP for SNP with the Highlands and Islands for a number of years, and then he became the MSP for Skye, Lochaber and Badenoch, and he's now representing the Alliance for the Independence Party tonight. So he's going to be discussing his opinion on that. But basically tonight, our hope is that we will answer your questions. Now, the debate tonight is going to be, we're going to hear from our 2 speakers, and thanks very much to both of them for coming along. And we're also going to be getting questions coming in from you who are watching at home. So obviously, if you've got any questions about it, please do get them sent in, and I will do my best to ask as many as possible. And so we're hoping that it'll be a really good night and there'll be lots of information comes out of it. It's such an important, as I said, it's such an important election, and it's important that we know what our options are basically as independent supporters for that election. So I'm just going to start off then tonight with going through how it's going to work. Peter's going to speak for a few minutes on his opinion on it, and Dave will ask him some questions, and then that'll swap over, and we're going to be putting the questions out, bringing questions to them from you at home so that we're watching, and then at the end there'll be a summing up from both of our members here in the panel. So let's start off with you, Peter. Would you like to start a little discussion about why you think we should vote SNP 1 and 2?
Right. Okay. Let's start with a correction. When the online poster was first put up for this event, I got a wee bit annoyed. Not because they'd used an old photograph of me from back in the days when I was a fat so-and-so. Although that was bad enough, I put in the effort. I want to show off this new bod as much as possible. But what actually annoyed me was just precisely what Gwen there said there. I'm not in the business of telling anybody how to vote. I have never said to anybody that they should vote SNP 1 and 2. I don't tell people how to vote. I ask questions, and I encourage others to ask questions. That's all. I think when somebody's asking you for your vote, you are entitled to ask questions of them. You have a duty to ask questions of them. And I just point out certain things, and this is perhaps where people have picked up the wrong end of the stick. I point out, for instance, that SNP 1 and 2 has served to keep the British parties in opposition for the past 14 years. That has to be something. It's not nothing. It's actually quite important keeping them in opposition. I'm not asking for anybody's vote. I'm just asking that people really think about how they use their vote. I'm not asking. I'm not looking to get a seat in Parliament. I'm not asking how we get rid of unionists from the Parliament. They're entitled to be there. They're there because people vote for them, and we have a proportional system. And I quite like having a proportional system. It's not the electoral system that's the problem, it's the parties. It's the fact that they're British parties. The electoral system is fine. It actually works out quite well for us. So I'm not looking to get rid of unionists. So long as they're in opposition, they're not a problem to me. And I'm not asking how to get a pro-independence super majority. Because having thought about the matter and having asked the pertinent questions, I realise that a super majority is of absolutely no use to anybody. It's not a super majority that we need, it's a super mandate. There's nothing that you can do with a super majority that you can't do with a simple majority. But there's a lot of things that you can do with a super mandate that you can't do if you have no mandate at all or only a weak mandate. So I always ask, the only question that's important to me is what is best for Scotland's cause? When I'm looking at the election next year, I'm asking, what is the outcome that best serves Scotland's cause? And I've come to my conclusions on that, and my conclusions don't involve any of these list parties. I don't know what we're supposed to call them, but my conclusions don't involve any of them.
Okay, thank you. So, Dave, would you like to come in? You're allowed to ask 3 questions here, so or less. You don't have to ask 3 if you don't want to. But so, would you like to ask Peter some questions?
Yeah. Thanks very much, Gwen and Peter. Thanks for expounding your position there. That's very, very helpful. I follow lots of your other stuff as I do follow other bloggers too. I just wonder, Peter, when you say that you like the current system, that's fine. It's a proper legal system, just like the Westminster system is, where Boris Johnson and his pals get an 80-seat majority on 42% of the vote. Why is it, do you think, that you'd prefer to have maybe 60-odd unionists in the Scottish Parliament talking down the SNP government, scheming and plotting all the time to undermine independence, rather than knock them down to, say, 35, with 25 independents supporting MSPs from AFI to assist the Scottish government in promoting independence?
First point, the Scottish Parliament and the Scottish electoral system, Scottish voting system, isn't anything like the Westminster system. I said I quite like it because it's proportional. The Westminster system isn't proportional at all. So let's clear that one up right away. Neither did I say, we've got the misrepresentation coming in early, neither did I say that I prefer having unionists in Parliament. It's not a matter of my preference, it's the preference of the people who vote for the unionist parties. And as far as I'm concerned, so long as they have a vote in Scotland, they're entitled to vote for whoever they like. And if that means that they're voting for unionists, then I've just got to suck it up. My preference doesn't come into it. And I actually don't care if they're unionists in the Scottish Parliament. I'm not fussed about that. So long as they're in opposition, they can't do anything to stop independence. So long as they're in opposition, I don't care. What I object to is not the fact that they're unionists, but the fact that they're British parties and not Scottish parties. I hear you, Dave, saying that you want to get the unionists out of the Scottish Parliament. Well, I set my sights a wee bit higher than that. I want to get the British parties out of Scotland.
Well, thanks very much, Peter. So do I. I've spent 55 years since I was 16-year-old arguing that very point, and we're getting very close to it now. When Ruth Davidson took over the Tories and between 2011 and 2016, her whole mantra was vote Tory and stop the SNP and stop another referendum and stop independence and all the rest of it. And she succeeded. She doubled the Tory regional list vote, and she doubled their number of seats from 12 to 24. That was tactical voting. That was strategic voting by unionists. A lot of Labour people voted Tory to stop Scottish independence. In Highland, the Tories got more votes in the regional list than they did in the constituencies. And that's because a lot of Labour and Liberal people voted for them tactically, used the system to max the unionist vote. They're going to do that even more in next year's election. So what would happen if the unionists, as they do in most elections, advise tactical voting to their supporters to go to the party that's most likely to keep Scottish independence off the agenda, which is what they're going to do. And let's say by doing that, they max the unionist vote on the regional lists and keep the SNP from having a majority at all. That's not going to get you independence, is it?
So you're acknowledging that the SNP need list seats, the list seats that you're going to compete with them for?
No, that's not what I said. The SNP will probably get a majority in the constituencies, but if the unionists...
Then why should I care? Then why should I care? Why should I care what the unionists do with the list seats? If they're going to be in the minority, they don't matter. They're not going to be able to do anything. It's the Scottish government that can act.
But they can actually vote tactically in constituencies as well, which could be a problem for the SNP. Our proposals are that we encourage all yes voters, including Labour yes voters, to vote SNP to make sure the SNP get their majority.
Yeah, well, we've already been doing that in past elections. Voting everybody who's an independent supporter, no matter what party is their preference, we're encouraging them to vote SNP. And as I say, it's worked out reasonably well. You yourself referred to the way the polls are now. That's all we have to go by. So we have to just keep saying as things stand. So as things stand, as you say, SNP stand to get a majority on the constituency vote alone. The list would be a wee bit of a safeguard for them, maybe. I don't see why other pro-independence parties should be competing with them on that list. And I don't care what happens to the unionists. I'll say it again. So long as they're in the minority, they don't trouble me in the slightest.
Well, if they tactically vote in the Highlands, they'll knock out the SNP list seat, one of the 4 that the SNP got.
Yeah, but you just said...
Let me finish. That will damage the SNP. However, we've got an answer. We've got an answer for that, and that is to unite all the small parties and get people to vote for AFI and the small parties, and we will actually gain list seats in the Highlands and knock out unionists and make sure that there is an independence majority in the Scottish Parliament, because it's not an SNP majority we need, although I think they'll probably get it in the constituencies. It's an independence majority, and that's the difference.
I'm not sure there was a question in there at all, but I'll have to tell you that there's a couple of points that I picked up on right away. You talk about uniting. Well, so do all the other ones that are not uniting with you. The whole unite thing just is totally meaningless when it's coming from you guys. It just doesn't mean a thing. And this idea that it's not an SNP majority that we need, it absolutely is, because it's the Scottish government that matters in this situation, the government with a mandate. It's not any of the other parties. It's certainly not the opposition parties. It is all about the SNP this time, because it's all about the Scottish government, and there's only the SNP that's in a position to form a government. That is just pragmatic politics.
Okay, thanks for answering my questions. I'll maybe now do my 5 minutes or so, if that's okay, Gwen.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, just to explain fully what Action for Independence, and we've had to change our name to Action because the Electoral Commission didn't like Alliance, to explain what we're all about. And it's to do with the SNP list seats. We firmly believe that with the whole Yes movement behind the SNP and the constituencies, that the SNP will probably win around 69, 70 constituencies, and the latest polls are certainly showing that. Although we can never take these things for granted, and that's great, there's a majority there. But the SNP people who vote SNP with their regional list vote, the second vote, in 6 of the regions in Scotland, out with the Highlands and Islands and south of Scotland, totally wasted their vote. They elected no regional list MSPs for the SNP. But Tories and Labour and Liberals got in their place. What we want to do is make sure that independence supporting MSPs are elected in these regions to replace unionists, to give us that supermajority that Peter says he doesn't need. You know, I was in a minority government between 2007 and 2011, and it was tough, hard work. Bruce Crawford, our business manager, did an amazing job. We actually won about 2/3 of the votes of the motions that we put forward in the Parliament, but we lost 1/3 of them as well because we couldn't get the mini coalitions that we needed in the Parliament at that time. I would hate to be in a position where you've got a majority of one in the Parliament. What happens if somebody's sick or if someone dies or whatever? You've then lost your majority. If we want to win independence and win the vote convincingly, we've not only got to get a majority of MSPs, we've got to get that supermajority. 70 SNP and 24 from Action for Independence would give you 94. Plus, we should be looking to get a majority of the vote over and above that. The SNP, for 953,000 votes in the 2016 election, got 4 seats. The Tories and Labour between them got 960,000 votes and got 45 seats. Now, I accept what Peter's saying about this PR so-called system, and it is sort of PR, but it's not properly PR. The unionists have been using that system for decades, and Ruth Davidson used it very, very successfully. All we're doing is saying we want to do that. Now, we've already got one of the smaller parties joining us. We are still speaking to the others, and I think once they start looking at the facts, once they start working through the statistics, they'll realise that the best way for them and for us and for Scotland, which is much more important than any party, is to unite and pull that vote together. All that we actually need is to get one person in 8, right? One person in 8 who voted SNP in the regional lists in 2016 to vote AFI, and we get 8 list MSPs across Scotland. One person in 8 to switch from the SNP and the regional list vote to AFI, and we've got 8 MSPs in Holyrood. That's all we need. 1 in 4, and we get 16. Now, that's a huge bonus for Scotland. It means you've got people in that parliament that are actually positive about Scotland, that will not be trying to undermine the SNP government. Bear in mind that Westminster is already laying its plans to destroy our movement and stop independence. But surely it must be a good thing if we are going to maximise the number of pro-indy MSPs in the Scottish Parliament for the pure purpose of delivering Scottish independence.
No,
Dave, thank you very much. So, Peter, would you like to ask Dave some questions on that?
Just keeping on saying things doesn't make them true. Given that at the moment we're urgently trying to get people to register to vote and desperately trying to get people to engage with and participate in the democratic process, do you really think it's a good idea to be telling them they're wasting their votes?
Well, I think, Peter, that the facts speak for themselves. If you are in any one of the 6 regions in Scotland where the SNP got no MSPs, and you're an SNP voter and you vote for them in the constituency, it's obvious that your second vote elected nobody at all. And for the SNP to gain any extra regional list seats in those regions, they would need an extra 35 to 40,000 votes. And these votes would all have to come from unionists. What we're saying is, don't vote for the SNP in the regional lists anywhere in Scotland, but vote for independent supporting parties under the AFE banner. We would just need 7,000 or 8,000 votes to get an MSP in those seats. And this is from people who are already committed to Scottish independence, who vote SNP in the constituency, but wisely use their second vote to vote for independent supporting MSPs who have united under the AFE banner. They would need an extra 35 to 40,000 votes. And these votes would all have to come from unionists. What we're saying is, don't vote for the SNP in the regional lists anywhere in Scotland for independent supporting parties under the AFE banner.
That's it. So, sorry about that. Technical hitch there.
Yep, these things happen. Right. I'm cynical. The more people tell me how easy and wonderful it's going to be, the more cynical I get. And I didn't find an answer in there to the question. What I actually noticed was something that I've learned to watch out for. When the pop-up party, list party, cunning plan party folk, when they're talking about the regional vote, the list vote, you watch out for the times when they start talking about it as if it was a one-off, self-contained, first-past-the-post election. That's how they get to this thing about wasted votes. If in 1 minute they're treating it as if it's part of the additional member system, the next minute they're treating it as if it's a first-past-the-post election. Watch out for that. My second question. You talk about unity. A couple of weeks ago, I took part in an online event where there was yourself and somebody from one of the others and somebody from the Greens. And you were all talking about unity while you were all squabbling and assuring everybody that you would never cooperate with one another. This whole thing about unity is a myth. It's absolutely essential for you even to succeed in your own terms, and it's a myth. It's just not happening.
Okay. Well, first of all, I wasn't squabbling at that debate. It was the one at Oban, I think, that Keith Brown, the deputy leader of the SNP, appeared in, and Lorna Slater, the co-convener of the Greens, and also Professor John Curtis, who at the end of that debate actually thanked me and said he understood better what we were trying to achieve after having listened to the debate. Now, others may well have said that they wouldn't want to join. I think Lorna said that. And we're not asking the SNP to join AFI. But I wouldn't characterise it as squabbling, as you've put it. Unity is what we are trying to do, and this is unique. I would ask you if you have ever heard in your life before in Scottish politics of a party with a constitution that specifically allows other parties to join it and to have their candidates selected into winnable positions on the regional lists. All of the other smaller parties in Scotland are normal, basic parties with their own policies, and they don't allow other parties to join them. They allow individuals to join them. Our party, and it's only a party because you have to register as a party to be able to stand in the election. Ours is an alliance, a true alliance. And you know what? I never said it was going to be easy. It's far from easy. But you know what? I've never given up in my life because something was hard. If I had been like that, then back in 1965, when I was 16 and the SNP were getting 3 or 4% in the polls, I would never have joined them. I would have given up at that time, but I didn't. I persevered through the tough times and through the better times for 55 years. So I'm not a quitter. I'm not someone who balks because something's difficult. I mean, what you're really saying, Peter, is that if something's not easy, if it's
don't tell me what I'm saying.
Try it.
Don't tell me what I'm saying. I'll speak for myself. Thank you very much. No, I'll quite happily show you the respect of letting you speak for yourself. I'll pick you up on a point there. You're not a party. You keep referring to our party. You're not a party. You've been knocked back by the Electoral Commission once, and you're likely to be knocked back again. Who knows? No. You may not be a party. Besides, I still don't have any answer to how you're going to get this unity. You talk about how wonderful it would be, but no explanation as how you're going to achieve it. At the very minimum, I reckon there's going to be 3 or 4 pro-independence parties, all squabbling over the same 3 to maybe 7% of the vote, and I just see that as a distraction. I don't see any point in it at all. So we still don't know how you're going to. We still don't know if you're actually going to be a party, and we can be, I think, pretty sure that you're not going to get the unity that you keep talking about. But that brings me to my main question, the big question. You're now calling yourself, this week, you're calling yourself Action for Independence. What action? What can you actually do? Even supposing you get 2 or 3 of your candidates, I don't know, are they your candidates? I don't know. See, that's another one of the problems here. You talk about it being this new idea. Novelty is not a great thing when you're going into elections. People either aren't interested or they don't understand it. Novelty is not an advantage. But what I'd like to know is specifically, and I'm not talking about sitting on the benches cheering, I say specifically, what action does that word in your title stand for? What action would you take in the Scottish Parliament to bring about the restoration of Scotland's independence?
Well, firstly, our resubmission of our application to the EC went in 2.5 weeks ago, and they say they'll take about 4 weeks probably to come back to us, and we're very confident that they will approve us at the end of next week. So watch this space and see what happens there. The only argument that people seem to have against us is that they think it'll not work, that we'll only get a few percent, just like all other small parties always have done. We're confident if we can get unity, and that is key. You're absolutely right, Peter. And I think when the ISP, the SSP, and the Greens and so on realise that united we stand, divided we fall, they will think more carefully about coming over. Now, they might not. Maybe we'll fail. Maybe we'll fall flat on our faces, but we don't expect to. We have high hopes that the logic of our argument here will win through. And I have never heard you actually denying that the statistics actually prove that we are right, that 1 million votes for the SNP and the regional lists delivered 4 seats. That's 250,000 per seat, whereas the Unionists, Tory and Labour, another 1 million votes, got 45 seats. You've never denied, to my knowledge, that our maths and our arithmetic is correct in terms of what we can achieve if we get up to the 5% and above, which united, we really do believe that we can. What we'll do once we get elected is we'll support independence. We'll back the SNP government and the Parliament in terms of making sure that it doesn't get voted down in a vote of no confidence, which could happen if there's a tiny majority next year rather than a substantial super majority. And we'll back that government through the negotiations for independence. And we'll put forward as strong a case as we can to make next year the independence election. I would argue we've already had a major effect because there's much more talk now about next year being the independence election. The SNP seem far more positive about pushing independence next year. So I would argue we've already had an impact even before we've managed to get registered with the EC. But we are a political party. We have a constitution. I'm not sure if you've seen our constitution, but it would be useful if you maybe had a look at it and read it and based your opinion on how we're structured, rather than what you think how we may be structured. So we have ambition for Scotland, and we are doing this as a one-off for next year. I'm not in this for personal gain. I left the Parliament 4 years ago. I could have stayed on. There was nothing stopping me from staying on in Parliament. I'm doing this because I really do believe that it's an idea whose time has come, and I'm doing it for Scotland, for my children and for my grandchildren.
Okay. So is that us finished with the questions for just now then? And are you ready to move? Were you wanting to come back on that, Peter?
I just wanted to make the point that there's Dave speaking for me again, saying that I'd never questioned the statistics or the arithmetic. And I've also never said that this whole thing, because basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to organise tactical voting. The reason the unionist parties get away with it is that they don't have to try and organise anything, because what they're trying to do is very simple, very straightforward, and they just need everybody doing exactly the same thing. But I've never disputed that it could work in theory. There's lots of things that work in theory, but they don't work in practice. And I've never disputed the arithmetic. But I'm wits enough to know that politics is a lot more than just arithmetic. I've never disputed the statistics, because it's the conclusions that you draw from the statistics that matter. I mean, it may be right to say the SNP got the 900,000 odd votes and you got 4 seats. That may be perfectly true, a perfectly accurate thing to say. But to conclude from that you need a proliferation of list parties is a bit of a nonsense. It's the conclusions that are drawn from these things that are very dubious.
Well, your conclusion.
When people say to me, sorry, David, just excuse me a moment. People say to me, I get this all the time, you can't argue with the numbers. You can't argue with the figures, they say, to which I reply, jeers.
Well, Peter, you finished off there by saying you came to the conclusion that a proliferation
That's not what I said.
No, you just did. Proliferation of parties wouldn't work. Well, you see, you've got it wrong again. You're not listening to what I'm saying. We have a constitution which allows the smaller parties to come together under the AFI umbrella. Already Solidarity have come on board. If the SSP and the ISPs and the Greens came on board, you'd have 5 parties standing together. Now, that's not a proliferation of parties. That's a uniting of parties, a reduction in proliferation from 4 or 5 to 1. That is what is behind our whole argument. Concentrate the effort, concentrate the vote, unite the clans, if you like, and beat the unionists. What's not to like?
You say it's your ambition, and you say, if we do this, hang on a minute, have we got to depend on that? I tell you what, here's the thing. I'll ask you a question. If you haven't got the unity that is your ambition by a particular date, let's say 3 months before the election, will you roll up your carpet and go home? Will you just pack it all in? Disband the AFI.
You're basically arguing that I should give up now. Well, I've said
no. That's not what I said at all.
Very easily.
That's not what I said at all. That's not what I said. You said that yourself that the whole thing depends on getting this unity. You said, if we get this unity, you said it's your ambition to get this unity, which implies that you don't yet have it. Well, we all know you don't yet have it. What I'm saying is there a point at which, if you haven't got that unity by that time, you will withdraw? Or are you just going to carry on even without the unity? In which case, why is the unity important in the first place?
We are confident we're going to get the unity.
No.
Now, let me finish. We're confident that the folk who currently vote SNP in the second votes, where their votes in the main are wasted, will see the strength of our arguments. And politics is all about putting your argument forward and convincing the people. We are confident that once we get that message out to the public, that folk will come behind us and they'll say, yeah. Now, if you actually look at what's happened previously, you'll notice that the SNP vote in the lists in 2016 was 2% lower than its constituency vote, but the Green vote was 2% higher than their constituency vote. These were people who voted SNP in the constituency and had already worked out that it was a waste of time voting SNP on the list. So they went to the Greens, and the Greens benefited. And I haven't heard anybody accusing the Greens of gaming the system, which seems to be one of the big problems people have with us. There are many more people out there, when you explain to them exactly what you can do on a very small percentage of the SNP voters coming over, who will see the strength of that argument. And we will be building that argument. And I'm absolutely confident that we'll get enough people. And once you see movement in the polls, then others will all come in behind.
Okay.
Tell you what I think, Dave. I tell you what I think, Dave. I tell you what I think. I think the days are gone when politicians could get away with dodging the question like that. And just keep on talking in the hopes that everybody will forget what the question was. I think those days are past. I think people see that sort of thing going on, and I don't think they like it. I don't think they like it. If they want that sort of thing, they can listen to Westminster politicians.
Okay. Now, we're going to be taking questions. We've had a few people sending in some pretty interesting questions. So first one is actually on the subject of the 2016 election. And I'll put it first. I'll just read it out first, and then, you can put your hand up if you want to answer it. Okay. Basically, this is from someone called Paul Donaldson. And the question is, the 2016 results show that the SNP would have needed nearly 37,000 extra votes, which is an increase of nearly 15%, to have won a list seat in Glasgow, and over 40,000 extra votes, a 14% increase, to have won a list seat in Mid-Scotland and Fife. AFI could have won a list seat in either region with a vote share of around 6%, given that the SNP vote increase needed would have come from unionist parties, but the AFI vote share could come from the Yes voters, moving the votes from the SNP to the AFI on the list. Right, could the panellists tell us which they think would be more realistic to achieve and why? So, hands up, who wants to answer that question? I'll take the first hand.
Well, I'm happy to answer it because Peter obviously is frightened to answer it because the statistics are absolutely sound, and it's what I said earlier, and it proves the point I made. The mathematics are absolutely bang on here. What we have to do is ensure that we get this message out there to folk around Scotland so that they can see how they can really, really help Scotland, their children and grandchildren, into a great future. And if Peter wants to dispute these figures, he's welcome to answer now.
I actually had my hand up before you. I'm not afraid to address any question. Dave's the one who's been dodging the questions here today. I listened to the question and I thought, it's all if this and if that and what if, and if we put these figures into a certain order, then we can get this to come out at the other end. Politics is more than arithmetic. You can organise the figures whatever way you like, and the figures can be totally accurate. This is my point. The arithmetic in GERS is all totally spot on. Nobody can fault the arithmetic. It's the conclusions that are taken out of it. If you're saying that the figures don't lie, then GERS has Scotland down as an economic basket case, and we'll just have to accept that. No, the figures do not tell the whole story. Politics is more than arithmetic.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next question now, which is from SciTV Tam. Hi, Tam. If splitting your vote didn't work in 2016, what makes you think it will work in 2021? Peter?
Well, I don't think it will work. And I hear all sorts of stuff from these guys. They say that they're not splitting the vote. They're not splitting the vote. Well, of course you are. If you're taking votes from the SNP, but we're not taking votes from the SNP. Well, who are you taking them from then? They just seem to make stuff up as they go along. There's more than one way of splitting the vote. And one of the concerns that I've had all along with this is that you can never guarantee in political campaigning and election campaigns in particular, where you're campaigning on a wide range of issues, you can never guarantee that the message that the electorate hear, the message the voters hear, is the message that you're putting out. And the more complex the message that you're putting out, like all those figures that we heard just a moment ago, How many voters do you think would sit still and listen to that? None. They're going to hear, my concern is that voters are actually going to hear it's okay not to vote for the SNP. My concern is that there's this campaign supposedly isolated to the regional vote, which is saying you really shouldn't vote for the SNP. And my concern is that it's going to spill over onto the constituency vote and act as a spoiler. It's a danger. How much of a danger it is, I've no idea. But supposing it's only a very, very tiny risk, that risk has to be weighed against the gain. And there is no gain, because this supermajority does not give us any benefit. And when I say us, I mean Scotland's cause, the cause of restoring Scotland's independence. The supermajority does not give us any benefit in that. So we've nothing to gain, absolutely nothing to gain, but we have all these small risks. Like there's this risk of the electorate receiving mixed messages or wrong messages.
Yeah, nothing's without risk, Peter, but I wouldn't agree with your analysis of the risk there. The statistics, the figures, the maths are actually very simple. And these are the figures I think people will understand. The SNP got 953,000 votes in the regional list in 2016 and got 4 seats. Labour and the Tories got 960,000 votes on the regional list in 2016 and got 45 seats, 11 times more. That's pretty simple maths. You can change that if you're one of those 953,000 people who voted for the SNP. If you vote for AFI, with our umbrella parties below us, then you can actually take many of these seats. If 1 out of 8 of you vote for AFI, we get 8 MSPs into the Scottish Parliament and we push out 8 unionists. And the second point that you made in answering the question there, we're not splitting any vote. We're uniting the votes of the parties. That's what we're trying to do. And we haven't succeeded yet, but we shall. But you know what else we're going to be doing? We're going to be campaigning to push up the turnout. We want, and we've already challenged the SNP and the Greens and others to put independence at the heart of next year's election. And it looks like that's where they're going. And if you go back to 2017, when many Yes voters did not go out to vote for the SNP because the SNP did not put independence at the heart of their campaign that year, these people will come out and vote next year if they know that it is a crucial independence election and that by voting for the SNP in the constituencies, and we'll be campaigning hard for that, and voting for AFI and the other parties that join us in the lists, that they can get their independence, these folk will come out. And they won't just come out to vote in the list, they'll come out to vote in the constituencies, because when they're in the booth, they'll exercise both their votes. So by increasing the turnout, we will increase the number of seats the SNP get, so they will benefit massively. And on the list, we will benefit, and the unionists will lose by that. That is all pretty simple and pretty straightforward. That's the message that we're putting out, and it's resonating with people already. And once we really get going on the campaign, we are going to start to see the support for our concept rapidly rise.
Thanks very much. Thanks both of you for your answers to that question. We've now got another question, which is from Billy Holland. And the question is, in 2026, 2026, we have 5 years too long to wait for independence with the internal market bill enacted. Sorry, basically, is 2026 too long to wait for independence because of the internal market bill being enacted by them?
Well, not just because of the internal market bill, but it's too long to wait anyway. And one of my concerns about this distraction of playing silly games with the list vote is that we're not focused on what's actually going on here. The British Nationalist One Nation product is already underway. It's already rolling. It's well underway. And the Scottish Government, and I admit that's an SNP government, and they've done absolutely nothing to address it in that 6 years. And I have had things to say about that. However, we've got an election looming, and 2026 is definitely too late. We have to regard, even if it isn't actually, we have to treat the 2021 Holyrood election as if it's our last chance. As if it's our last chance. We have to behave as if it's our last chance. That's why we have to be asking ourselves, not what the arithmetic says and how you can fiddle it to do this and that. What we should be asking ourselves is what outcome best serves the cause of restoring Scotland's independence. If you're asking any other question, then you've lost your way somewhere. That is the one question that you should be asking. And what serves Scotland's cause best of all is an SNP majority with a huge mandate. Huge mandate, like over 50% of the vote on both polls. This thing about wasted votes and your votes don't count, that is anti-democratic. Saying that is undermining democracy to say stuff like that. Those votes count. Because I just want, Dave's forever asking us to imagine this wonderful outcome. He's selling this wonderful outcome without selling the process of how we get there. So I'll ask you to imagine how excellent it would be if, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Manifesto for Independence, but it basically involves getting short of the Section 30 process altogether and creating our own democratic process within our own parliament. Now, suppose you had, suppose the SNP were to commit to that Manifesto for Independence before the referendum, and they got the majority that is predicted for them in the constituency vote, and they maybe got a couple of list seats, but more importantly, they got over 50% of the vote on both seats. There you have a party committed to take specific action that Dave couldn't even describe his party taking. You've got a party actually in government committed to take action and with an unchallengeable mandate for it. No votes siphoned off elsewhere for this or that purpose. All those votes given not to the SNP, to the Scottish government, because it's the Scottish government that will act on our behalf.
I'll answer that then, because it's interesting that Peter uses phrases like silly games and fiddling the system and all this kind of stuff. He doesn't have any real arguments against what we're saying, you see. And
well, you haven't been listening then.
Why he has to resort to things like that. That the only objection that he has, and others too, is for fiddling the system. I'd already said we want to make next year's election the independence election. I don't disagree with what he's just said. We will be debating that at our conference. We'll be debating the route map to independence. And let's say, I don't know what we'll decide, or members will decide on this, but let's say we got our supermajority of MSPs, maybe 90 out of 129, and we got over 50% of the vote. Would that be a mandate for independence itself? Never mind a referendum. But we could maybe offer to confirm it later on. That's the sort of question that we need to be addressing, and we need to be thinking about moving forward to for next year's election, turning the election itself, depending on circumstances and so on, into the de facto decision-making vote on Scotland's independence. Because I worry, just like Peter does, that if we don't do it next year, we will not get another chance.
Thanks
If Dave hasn't heard my arguments, then it's because he's not listening. And there are a lot more than just silly games. I don't know how else to describe what's going on here with the list vote.
Questions now. I've got quite a lot. We've got a great big stream of questions that have come in, and I would really like to try and get through them. Sorry, but and also just to keep your answers a wee bit concise. But this one is particularly, the next question is, no, it's for both of you. So I think, no, maybe just for Dave actually. So I'll go for Dave first. It's the question from James Scott, and he's asking, if you vote SNP 1 and Alliance 2, who is the first on the Alliance list to get the seat?
Right, okay. Well, that'll be on the ballot paper. Our candidates will be listed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on, just like all the other parties on the regional lists. The candidates will be chosen by the umbrella parties that come on board. We'll negotiate with them for a certain number of winnable places across Scotland, a few places that are winnable, and the remainder, which will be the majority of seats, will actually be chosen by our members. So if you take the Highlands and Islands, our members in the Highlands and Islands will choose who is number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on, unless one of those places has already been allocated to one of the smaller parties in negotiations. So we'll negotiate first and allocate places to the smaller parties that come on board, and then our members will fill all the other spaces, and that will be on the ballot paper, on all our campaigning leaflets, so people will be really clear just who they are voting for when they vote for AFI. But we are hoping for a truly rainbow alliance, if I can put it like that, with a wide variety of candidates who people might even know, who will take views into Holyrood on a whole range of issues. Because you see, the only thing we ask our candidates and our umbrella parties to do is support independence. And if they support independence on every other matter, they can follow their own party policies, they can follow their own consciences. So just imagine a parliament full of Margot MacDonalds. When Margot left the SNP, she stood in Lothian as an independent, she backed independence, but she had her own mind and her own policy proposals and a whole range of other things. That's what we are envisaging. That's what we are looking for in AFI after next year's Scottish election.
Thanks very much. I think that's answered the question really well. The next question that's come in is for actually specific for Peter, and it says it's from Hugh Kerr. And the question is, Peter, isn't a supermajority the only thing that convinces the Tories to accept the need to have a second referendum?
No. Nothing convinces. If it means that the Tories in London, the British government in London, nothing convinces them of the need to have another referendum, other than being absolutely persuaded that they can sabotage that referendum. The only thing that's worse than Boris Johnson to a Section 30 order is him saying yes, because he's only going to say yes if he knows that he can scupper the whole thing at some point later on. And if you actually think about it, there are myriad ways that he can do that. It's very simple for him to do that, especially after the Scottish Government has accepted the authority that the Section 30 order gives him as the gold standard. It's the British state's gold standard. No, you won't convince the Tories to accept the need for a second referendum. And the Tories know damn fine, they know as well as I do, that a supermajority is useless. It doesn't mean any more than a simple majority. They're not going to be impressed. It sounds very impressive, you know, when you're standing on the back of the snake oil wagon, with giving your spiel. It sounds very impressive, supermajority. But when you're actually thinking about it, you know, it's the tawdry baubles, it's the shiny things that politicians use to dazzle voters with. The Tories, it's not the Tories that we have to convince anyway. Stop thinking about having to convince the Tories. We've got to have that referendum whether the Tories like it or not.
If I'm needing any snake oil, Peter, I'll know who to come to, that's for sure. Boris Johnson has a super majority on a super minority of the vote. 42% of the vote, an 80-seat majority. It's accepted, you know.
Westminster is not Holyrood. Holyrood is not Westminster. They're different. They're different parliaments. They're different electoral systems.
You can talk over me as much as you like. It doesn't change the system.
I think it's important to point out the facts here. And the fact is that there is no sensible way to make comparisons between Boris Johnson's super majority in Westminster and your mythical super majority in Holyrood. They're totally different things.
Can I answer? Yeah. There is validity in comparing them because they're both legal systems and there are many other systems all over the world. And if you use the legal system, that is what counts. And it's the number of seats normally that matter. So if you use a system like the first past the post system in the UK elections, and if you use the hybrid system of first past the post plus the D'Hondt aspects of AMS, as long as you do it lawfully and legally, it is valid. And anyone who argues that it isn't valid is doing the Tories' work for them.
Well, I didn't argue that it wasn't valid. I just argued that it's useless. It serves no purpose.
Right, another question's come in. We've actually got quite a big stack of them. I'm going to have to rattle through them now because we're getting close to the end and I'd really rather answer as many as we can. This is a question that came in from Millie Jameson. And the question is, do you think people will be confused who to vote for with all these smaller parties coming up? So I'll start that with you, Dave. You might want to respond.
Well, I'm very hopeful that the smaller parties that already exist will come under our umbrella. And there won't be a whole lot of small parties on the regional list. There will be AFI, and in our campaigns with the smaller parties, who will all be campaigning for AFI if they come under our umbrella, the public will only need to know that there's one set of smaller parties to vote for, and not 4 or 5 or 6.
Thank you. Peter, do you want to come in on that?
I want something a wee bit stronger than Dave's hope.
Okay, we'll get you a different question. There's loads here. So, okay, here's one. It's is there any? This is from Hashbury Stumble. Is there any polling evidence that the fringe parties have sufficient support to take seats on the list? So, do you want to take that?
I haven't heard of any. One of the concerns that I've seen expressed by psephologists, and I stress I am not a psephologist. I do political analysis. I don't do polling analysis, but I know people who do. And one of the concerns has been that the collection of list parties take enough. A big enough, I'm trying to put this as simply as possible. I'm probably oversimplifying, but we're in a hurry. If the list parties, however many there are of them, if they take a big enough percentage of the vote, the list vote, to cost either the SNP and or the Greens seats, but not enough to take seats themselves. That is probably the biggest risk to the pro-independence majority. There's no threat to the pro-independence majority from the unionist parties, not as polling stands at the moment. But that is the only thing that I have seen identified as a serious risk to the pro-independence majority. And it's a totally unnecessary risk. It's, like I've said repeatedly, it serves no purpose. So even if it's a small risk, why take it? You know?
Well, there is a very small risk that if we just don't get off the ground at all, and we don't get any more of the other parties joining us, and we languish about 2% along with the others who don't join us, we're not going to manage to do anything. But you don't start off a venture on the basis that you're going to fail. You start off a venture, and that's what we're in. We're looking to Scotland's future and the hope and the promise of actually succeeding. And if you look at the prize here, nothing in life is worth doing. If it's worth doing, then there's always a risk involved. You don't get anything in life without some risk. It's a tiny risk. All we need to do is convince people who already believe in Scottish independence. They're already nationalists in the sense they want independence for Scotland. They already vote SNP and with their second regional list vote. We just have to convince a fraction of them to vote for AFI and our united parties under our umbrella, and we reap massive gains. 12%, 1 person in 8 who currently votes SNP, we get 8 seats, 1 in 4, a quarter of the folk that vote SNP in the regional.
How many times are we going to go through this?
Seats. And the reason I'm repeating it, Peter, is because it's a simple message, it's not complicated, and it is factual. And that is
but this isn't a party political broadcast.
Well, I am a politician promoting AFI, so I suppose, in a sense, it's a broadcast.
Yeah, well, I enjoyed the little homilies and all this thing about there's always risks, and if a thing's worth doing, it's worth trying, and all the rest of it. Lovely little homilies. But I never got an answer to the question that I asked right at the beginning. At what point do you say this is not working? Do you propose, and going right down to the wire of the 2021 election, saying, if only we can get unity, if we can get unity, listen to this arithmetic that I've got here. I've been practicing it for months. I want another chance to use it before the vote. If we can get, at what point are you going to say, right, we haven't got that unity? You can't possibly keep going right to the election, saying if we get it.
We are going to succeed. No doubt about that.
Another politician's non-answer.
Why would I get involved with this if I thought it was going to fail? And you know, Peter, you've made many negative comments about what we're trying to do. I don't think I've heard any positive comments from you as to how we
an answer.
Our independence.
Still not an answer.
Okay, I think we will move on to I'm afraid it's going to be the last question tonight. There's quite a few on the list that I haven't had a chance to read out, so apologies to anybody who has sent in questions, but I'm trying to get through as many as we can. It's such a hot topic. There's a lot of debate about it. So anyway, the last question tonight is from Samuel Cook, and it says Peter, but obviously, Peter, you can get the start of the question, and then Dave, if you want to come in to respond, that would be fine. But the question is, Peter, you say that the Scottish Parliament voting system is proportional. However, what is proportional about hundreds of votes being lost due to constituency gains? We in Scotland don't truly get what we vote for on this current system. Can you explain how this will change with SNP1 and SNP2, as in the status quo?
Well, it's not me that says the Scottish voting system is proportional. It's people like Professor John Curtis. I don't carry figures around in my head like Dave does, but it's easy enough to find. The Scottish voting system actually provides for a proportional parliament. The parliament is proportional. Representation in the parliament is proportional to votes cast, or it's close to proportional. It's not exactly proportional. No proportional system is. So this hundreds of votes aren't lost. They are used as part of this system. It's called the additional member system. One of the stock accusations from the list vote people is as soon as you express any doubts about what they're flogging, they say, "Oh, you just don't understand the voting system." But trust me, I understand the voting system. I understand it perfectly well. I've listened to John Curtis's explanations of it often enough over the years. I understand it perfectly well. But it's obvious that some people are being confused about it, and they're being confused by the likes of Dave Thompson describing the list vote as a standalone first past the post election. Otherwise, how does anybody come to this conclusion that hundreds of votes are being lost? They're not being lost. They're part of the system. You've got to take the two votes together. They work together as a system. You can't take one and just think of it in isolation. They work together as a system. The list provides the additional member.
The system is there to elect our parliament. And part of the reason it was set up the way it was to stop the SNP ever getting a majority. Now, I think it's rather sweet irony that we are able to use it to get our independence. And if you look back over the 20 years of the history of the Parliament, you'll find that there are many small parties that just stand on the list. I haven't heard anybody in the past accusing these parties of gaming the system because they didn't stand in the constituency as well as the list. They stood in the list because they knew that to get 6% of the vote in a region would get them an MSP. And that has happened for small parties in the past. And I didn't hear any objections to that from anybody. Therefore, why there are so many people now getting very worked up about what we are proposing to do for the benefit of Scotland, it's beyond me. Because
I'll tell you if you like.
The system that we have, we're applying it legally. We're convincing folk that already believe in independence to use their vote in a different way, more wisely, to increase the number of MSPs.
You said you can't understand why people are making a fuss about it this time. I'll explain it to you. It's because this election's different. You admitted that yourself right at the start. This election is different. This election is special. It's not like previous elections. This election is specially important. And that's why we shouldn't have any distractions from our main purpose. That is why people are asking so many questions about all these games. And you never heard me use the expression gaming the system tonight. You're the only one who's used that expression.
Well, you
don't push that one on to me.
Fiddle is a pretty similar word to gaming, Peter, I would have to say. The thing is, we have this system and we have to use it to best advantage for Scotland.
Okay, thanks very much for the response to that question. And obviously that, I'm afraid to say, was our last question tonight. But so basically, all that we want to be able to finish for night, we need to ask both of you, to do a little summing up of, about what you think is the last kind of message to go out to the people who are watching tonight. So I'll start with you, Peter, for that.
It's quite simple. People should vote as they see fit, but they should ask serious questions of the people who are asking for their vote. They should really interrogate them. They should scrutinise them. And if you've noticed one thing tonight, take this away. Notice this. Notice how Dave avoided answering questions. Now, when a politician is evading questions, you've got reason to be concerned. I am more concerned now than I was before.
Thank you. So, Dave, would you like to sum up?
Yes, certainly. I'll be much more positive than Peter, and I'm certainly not evasive. The election next year, as Peter himself said, is the most important election in our lifetimes. And he says that's a reason for not getting so many indy MSPs in the Parliament. Well, I just don't understand his logic. I think because it is such an important election, we must turn it in the public's mind absolutely clearly in all our party manifestos that it is the independence election, that this is the election. If you vote SNP, if you vote AFI, you are voting for independence for Scotland. And that should be in the manifestos so that no Tory, Labour or Liberal unionist can tell us that we didn't actually vote for independence. And all the parties must sign up for that. This is the most important election in our lives. It's got to be the Indy election. We've got to win our independence next year, because if we don't, we probably won't get another chance.
Well, that was great. Well, thanks very much to both of you for your contribution tonight. I think it was a really interesting debate. I think there's still a heck of a lot more to discuss on this subject, I would think, just from the number of questions we've had coming in. But it's been really, really interesting. And I've certainly learned a lot tonight. I've been kind of seeing it as the offside rule for the football offside rule, trying to work out what's the best way to go here. I think I understand it a little bit better than I understand the offside rule tonight. So thanks very much. I really appreciate it. But also just like to say thank you to everybody who contributed questions tonight. And I'm sorry again that we didn't manage to get to read them all out. And also to the team behind the scenes at Independence Live. Thanks so much for organising this and putting it on. And also to the team at Hope Over Fear who have put this on. So it just remains to say, basically, one of the biggest messages that I would like to see, just personally from me tonight, is that in order for any of this to happen at all, we need to make sure that we're all registered to vote. There's been, everybody's getting letters through. Just get on, check that you're actually registered to vote. Because my dream would be to see an unprecedented amount of people actually voting in this election. I think that would be a most wonderful message to give, because I think there has been, to be fair, a bit of a sort of a kind of lackadaisical attitude to some of the Scottish Parliament elections. And particularly, I think we mentioned earlier on the last one, I would like to see the numbers, absolutely humongous numbers, going out to vote, because that in itself would show that we're not a country that's prepared to lose our Scottish Parliament to any EU withdrawal bill, and we're not prepared to be put through any more of the insults that's been thrown at us. And potentially, if it's an independence, whether it's whatever decision you make, I don't think that I'm in any position. I would never tell someone how they should vote. But if you were thinking of voting for an independence party, whether it's 1 or 2 or 1 plus 1, then that's going to show, if enough people do that, that's going to be some message to send. And I think that's really what we need to be doing as well, getting to tell our friends and family to make sure you actually vote. Make sure these messages are really strong to get out there and put this forward. But basically, what I've really enjoyed tonight, and thanks very much, guys, once again. Really good to hear all your opinions. And until next time, if there may well be another time, we may well be discussing this again. Thanks very much. So,
thanks very much, Gwen.
I hope it was okay.
Thank you, Gwen.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
The What's On guide to live stream events and shows is now available. You can find the guide on the web at independencelive.net on multiple Facebook pages, or go direct with the web link tvl.ink/What's On Guide.
This is a new voice for a new Scotland.
We know you're busy people, so most of our shows are also on demand on our Scottish Independence podcast channel, available wherever you get your podcasts. You'll see what a great variety of shows we have. There's something for everyone. Our newest on-demand platform is Indie Live Radio's YouTube channel. We have set up playlists for our most popular shows and current topics, currency, list parties. New content is added almost daily, so subscribe and you won't miss anything. Join us. Thanks for listening. What's On Guide to live stream events and shows is now available. You can find the guide on the web at independencelive.net, on multiple Facebook pages, or go direct with the web link tvl.ink/What's On Guide.
And to me, that's the clear blue water between staying in the UK and going for independence. It's clear, regardless of what Boris Johnson said the other day, that they will want to go back to business as usual, where the ultra-rich are the ones who gain from everything. Mm-hmm. We don't want to be part of that. We want the chance to actually build a fairer country.
But I don't think anybody who's gone over to Yes now is really for moving, because I think they can see clear as day what things look like. And I always felt that during the independence referendum that it would take a no vote in order for a lot of Scots to realise the consequences of voting no. They would have to see what happens when they vote no in order to realise what a mistake it was.
Film, you can watch this again, you can be part of it. It's Independence Live. Yeah, a few people asked about YouTube. It'll be YouTube/Independence Live. That's where you'll find the footage.
The What's On Guide to live stream events and shows is now available. You can find the guide on the web at independencelive.net, on multiple Facebook pages, or go direct with the web link tvl.ink/What's On Guide.
Here we are. It's the Yakin Bridge where we started the first 500 miles. In front of that beast there. This is where it all started. We're now in day 4 and we're heading towards Portree. We'll see he's on the road. Sign the covenant. Long walk to freedom. Talk to you later.
Hi there, I'm Cliff.
And I'm Russ.
And we're from the Veterans for Scottish Independence 2.0 group. And we're just invading your privacy today to let you know that we will be very shortly pushing a programme out on live stream to do with the veterans, their needs as it will be during an independent campaign. The next independence campaign, and indeed in an independent Scotland.
So get yourself in gear, come and join us, pull up a sandbag.
Yes.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Wherever you stand, get the fresh view of what's happening in Scotland with iScot. Celebrate everything about our country with intelligent, in-depth insight from lifestyle, culture to puzzles. And all the opinions you'll need, whether it's digital or by post. Subscribe now to iScot.
It's a song I wrote about 5 minutes ago called Carpe Diem, Hope Over Fear. Are you threatened by words from an empire of money and gold? Will you trade in your country's potential for the lies you've been sold? Are you scared that the walls are too high to be breached by the bold? Will you stand and be counted or shut up and do what you're told? Hope over fear, don't be afraid. Tell Westminster Tories that Scotland's no longer your slave. Carpe diem, will you seize the day? Rip the chains from the unicorn, Scotland's no longer your slave. Did the TV man call you a nationalist for rejecting the lies? Are the wolves of the few off the bob cause they wear shirts and ties? When they tell you that Scotland's no great, are you really surprised? Will you stand and be counted for something that money can't buy? Hope over fear, don't be afraid. Tell Westminster Tories that Scotland's no longer your slave. Carpe diem, will you seize the day? Rip the chains from the unicorn, Scotland's no longer your slave. Happy that nuclear weapons are dumped on the Clyde, fighting wars for the wealth of the few. How many have died? You can bet but the truth of it can't be denied. Will you stand and be counted, 'cause I'll be there stood by your side. Hope over fear, don't be afraid. The Westminster Tories of Scotland's no longer your slave. Carpe diem, will you seize the day? Rip the chains from the unicorn, Scotland's no longer your slave. Will the media tell you that England don't want you to go? And the taxpayer-funded MPs tell you just tell them no. No! But in Manchester, Nottingham, Sheffield, they already know that we're fighting for them, and it's only the start of the show. Ha ha! Hope over fear, don't be afraid. Tell Westminster Tories that Scotland's no longer your slave. Carpe diem, my friend, will you seize the day? With the chains from the unicorn, Scotland's no longer your slave. Vote yes for a future. Hope over fear. Ha ha!
I saw you weeping outside the seat of power. As you reflected on Scotland's wilting flower, a new horizon was all that really mattered. But dawn had broken as dreams and hopes lay shattered. The storm grew Wednesday in the meadows. The troops were gathering as Alba's future led us. Sing freedom's anthems, all nations join together. We shall be heard, our chains released forever. Change are blowing and careless on its way. A sea of soul tiles were sailing in the sky. Oh, proudly saying success, a bright new future rising. Lies and deceit from traitors was surprising. You showed the way and gave us inspiration. The seeds are sown to once more be a nation. The winds a change are blowing